The community asked for an Alibaba video, you guys requested it, that's why today I'm gonna dive a little bit into the history of Alibaba of recent years, their massive price decline at over 80% in only 2 years, and also about a little bit into the fundamentals and our outlook on Alibaba from here onwards. Stay tuned, we're jumping in right after the intro. Hello and welcome to another video by HKCM Global. My name is Joe, and as just requested, in case you have not been up to date and paid attention to Alibaba. Alibaba is the most popular consumer goods online supplier in China. So it's basically the Amazon of China. And even though Alibaba is such a huge player in the Chinese market, which not to forget at this point, the Chinese market is huge. The Chinese market in and of itself is about as big as the whole of the European Union and the United States combined. So if we're speaking about Alibaba being somewhat of an equivalent to Amazon, that is a huge company that we're talking about. And it's even that more shocking that a huge company like Alibaba, and we will also dive into a couple of those reasons in just a second, but when a huge company like Alibaba experiences a loss in market value of, bear with me, we're starting here all the way back at the peak in November of 2020. And from this peak all the way to the bottom here in November of 2022, Alibaba has seen an 82% cut in share price value. So imagine if, for example, a couple of years back, you had bought Amazon share at back then $319, and it's a huge company, right? It's a global player, and it had dropped all the way back to $58. That'd be completely mind-blowing, but that's exactly what happened to Alibaba. I just want to give you a rough feel for the magnitude of the market decline that we're talking about here in the stock. And of course, along with it, there was also a general ongoing decline in the Chinese market overall, which has been somewhat stagnant for the better part of 20 years now. But that's another story for another day. For example, someone that I covered in my most recent video here on this channel, maybe which can be displayed here right now. But back to Alibaba for now. So as just mentioned, the reasons for this huge market drop have been plentiful. So for example, starting with, of course, 2020, that was the time when the global economy came to a halt through all the lockdowns and supply chain disruptions that followed through those lockdowns. But also what happened is that the Chinese party placed a huge fine on Alibaba for monopolistic behavior, meaning Alibaba was accused of establishing treaties and regulations that forbid merchants that were selling on their platform to also list their products with other platforms. So, for example, if a merchant, a small distributor, had listed their products on Alibaba, he was completely forbidden to also list his products on, for example, JD or Pinduoduo. And as those allegations have been proven right, Alibaba was fined $2.8 billion. And that, of course, completely tanked investor confidence, because as soon as the Chinese party starts going after a certain company, nobody knows where that will lead. But in the case of Alibaba, it did not lead to complete market destruction of that company, but we are considering Alibaba as pretty much out of the woods for now, and I'm gonna share with you our outlook in just a second. But over all this time, what also happened, of course, it has been 2 years where Alibaba was completely beaten down and they had to come up with money for this huge fine. So also what happened during that time was that JD, competitor of theirs, pushed heavily into the same market, and also Pinduoduo, another competitor of theirs, also pushed into the market, and that's when the battle of the market share on online consumer goods in China really exploded. However, if we take a look at the fundamental data here in Alibaba, so back in 2020, when they just freshly experienced this huge hit of the $2.8 billion fine and also further regulatory restrictions to the way that did their business back then, we saw a revenue of annually $94 billion US. And ever since, just the next year, 2021, we have already climbed all the way up to $130 billion. So they didn't really care. It barely affected their revenue. Well, it did not at all affect their revenue growth. But ever since they somewhat plateaued, sure, to be fair. And you can see here that they have been plateauing ever since 2021, so 2022, 2023, 2024, roughly all the same ballpark in somewhere between 129 to 136 billion dollars in revenue. However, if we look at earnings, sure, here in 2021, huge earnings hit down to only 13.8 billion, but ever since we have been climbing, and as of last year, we are almost on track to again hit the pre-COVID highs here in earnings for Alibaba. And it becomes even that much more interesting if we also look at PE ratio, so price per earnings, meaning how much dollars do you have to pay for the stock for every dollar of earnings that is being created. So you can see that throughout all the history of Alibaba, we are currently sitting at 16.1. And throughout all that history of Alibaba, we have almost every single time when that data was collected have been way higher. So even here in this down peak, we have been at 20.9. Here in the super low peak, we have been at roughly 12. And now we are currently at 16.1. Just as a comparison, we just talked about Amazon, and Amazon being the Western equivalent to Alibaba. Amazon currently is also sitting at a historically low 33. And if we go back here in the past, Amazon has always been way higher, usually in the area between 50 to 100 in the recent past. So even this historically, for Amazon, historically low rating of 33 as of today is still double the PE ratio that Alibaba is currently bragging. So enough then with all this macro data and this fundamental news. What then is our outlook on Alibaba stock? What's our prediction here? And by the way, just as a small reminder, if you want to stay up to date on Alibaba and also on other assets, and you don't want to wait about some random YouTube video popping up here on this channel like every other week or so, you're very welcome to become a subscriber of a daily market analysis service. Link is down there in the description. We analyze 200 assets on a daily basis, giving you a full portfolio management with every single entry, exit to the market. You will get updates and push notifications every single scenario and target zone that we adapt. So if that sounds interesting to you, down there's the link taking you to our website. Have a look around and see if there's something of value for you. And now back to our scenario here. So our overall long-term scenario for Alibaba is that we have so far, after this ABC correction and the low in October or November, should I say, of 2022, we have seen the overreaching wave 2 low, and we conclude that we are currently in the already developing huge overreaching wave 3, meaning that in this long-term move that we're currently at, from current levels of 114-ish dollars, we would see at least another 300% of price gains in Alibaba stock, potentially even all the way up to 400% of price gains in Alibaba stock before the next huge overreaching correction in a wave 4 to follow is due. But that, as just mentioned, is the huge overreaching long-term scenario. You also, of course, do have a long to midterm scenario here. And here on the midterm scenario, that was the one that I just showed you, this tremendously violent sell-off of over 80% here. And now we're switching over to our outlook from here onward. Let me just quickly clean that up for you so it becomes all that more clear. So you remember, this is here the just mentioned before overreaching huge wave 2 bottom that we have seen all the way over in October, November of 2022. And we conclude that ever since, we have seen an already finished underlying wave 1 top here, an underlying wave 2 corrective bottom over here in January of 2025. And we are now currently in the already developing ongoing wave 3 to follow by a wave 4 and another wave 5, which should bring us imminently roughly in the area of at least $200 of stock price. However, here in the midterm outlook, we also do have an alternative scenario, currently only labeled at a 36% probability. And in this alternative scenario, that means that technically it would be possible that this wave 4 top that we have seen here, this wave 4 corrective top that we have seen here, and the wave 5 low then to finish off this overreaching wave 2 that we just spoke about could yet not already be finished, but we could see here an alternative wave 4 corrective top and then an alternative wave 5 corrective bottom to complete this overreaching corrective wave 2 to bring us even to new lows in the area of definitely below $58. So from a mere technical analytical standpoint, that is a possibility, but only at a currently estimated probability of 36%. And to really get to the meat of it, on the short-term outlook that we have for Alibaba, on the short-term outlook here, we, as just mentioned, conclude that the overreaching Wave 2 bottom here in this underlying move already is in, and of this already now currently developing Wave 3. We have also likewise already finished the Wave 1 top, and we are currently in a rather complicated WXY correction, leading us to this overreaching, or should I say underlying then, Wave 2 bottom. So here then the Wave 2 of the overreaching Wave 3 of the overreaching Wave 3 that we just spoke about in the very long-term outlook. So that is here on the short-term outlook, our clear scenario for Alibaba. Also on the short-term outlook, we likewise have an alternative scenario of this Wave 2 low, but this turquoise Wave 2 low to only be established in our alternative Wave 2 low here, only rated at a 34% probability as of now, so even lower probability, so something that I, as of now, would not worry about at all, and also something that only comes into play if we were to break structure here in our primary scenario. And if you are a subscriber, there's nothing to worry about there. As soon as we would recognize a break of structure here in our primary scenario, you will get notified, no question about it. And that's why also it's super important to have an analysis that you trust. Doesn't have to be ours, but if you have money invested in a stock like Alibaba, where the structure is everything but clear, of course we have our primary scenarios, but it's not like we only solely have this one primary scenario and there's no question about it whatsoever. The structure here in Alibaba is not 100% fully clear. So that's why it's all that much more important that you have an analysis where you will get updates and where you can just limit the risk for your money that you got invested in a stock like Alibaba. So hope that was helpful for you. See you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.